We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Robin Sharma. What is up, brother?
To the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial podcast.
This is going to be a fun conversation.
With your host,
man,
Jeff
there's so many
Lopes.
layers to what you do,
Jeff
and
has over 2
everybody you
decades
inspire and everybody you
experience
help
as
and
a
all the books
serial
you've written.
entrepreneur.
I want to take it back a bit. I want to start off
from
by
his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has
what was
sold
life
over
growing
a
up there
$250,000 pairs of boxing
give me your
gloves.
Canadian roots so our audience
Jeff's
gets
here
get to know your
educate,
Canadian
guide,
aspect of it.
and drive you on the process of bringing
So,
your ideas and dreams
I grew up
to
in
reality
Cape Breton
with the
before
inspiring
So,
stories
as you know, it's
from
a
some
small
of the
island
top
off the
business
coast of Nova
minds.
Scotia.
Welcome to
Probably
episode
about
164 of the
2,000
Jeff Knows Inc. podcast.
living
I'm your host,
there.
Jeff Lopes. Super
Come from
excited
very
to have
humble
on
beginnings.
today one of the
My
most
parents are
inspiring
immigrants.
authors of our
Lived
generation,
in
Robin
Hawkesbury
Sharma. Best known
I
for the
think
monk who
the
sold
highlight
his
of my
Ferrari and
childhood
his
was
newest
when
book,
the
The Everyday
A&W
Hero
went into
Manifesto.
Hawkesbury, so it was
Great
very
conversation.
small-
Sit back,
small
everyone, and
place,
enjoy.
not a lot happened. Then I moved to Dartmouth, as you mentioned, and I lived in Dartmouth and Halifax for, I don't know, 15 years or so. And then I moved to Toronto.
What age did you move to Toronto to?
Moved to Toronto, I'd say 25, roughly 25.
Oh, so you lived pretty much your whole childhood out east. You're when you moved to Toronto, so that was already after going to law school and all that stuff.
Yes, I went to Dalhousie in Halifax.
Yeah.
And then I went to work on Bay Street as a litigation lawyer. I was very unhappy doing it. Led me to sort of an existential crisis for a few years where I was looking for my way and trying to get a sense of meaning and fulfillment in my life. Made a big transformation, wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Was discovered in I know you want to focus on the Canadian part of things. So it was discovered in a Chapters bookstore in Markham, Ontario.
I love it.
By the president of HarperCollins, Ed Carson. HarperCollins bought the world rights for $7,500, and it just went on from there. And the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari has sold millions and millions of copies.
What was that original reaction when you first off, from the initial time you took pen to paper to start writing that book, what was the period? How long of a period was it? Was it during that whole 2-year period, or was it prior you started it?
So the 2-year period or the existential crisis was before I started writing, Jeff. And then after that, I took a sabbatical from my legal position for a year. And over that year, I was writing The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Self-published it.
Yeah.
In a Kinko's copy shop. Remember Kinko's?
Yeah.
And I just started, going to service clubs, speaking to 15 or 20 people at a time. And the book just, through word of mouth, it just took off.
With your law background and obviously your education, was that something you had a passion for, or was that something more, coming from obviously even your background, your cultural there's a lot. I mean, you always hear that stigma of pushing education to their children and really establish yourself. Where was your mindset getting into law? Did you have a passion for it originally, or was it just something where it's a great career? Let me just continue this path.
I used to watch LA Law when I was a kid, so
that's not the answer I was expecting.
I guess that's probably the extent of my passion for it. You're right. I mean, as I was growing up, I was encouraged to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I'm more of an artist than anything, like I share a lot of my life and my wins and my tragedies in the Everyday Hero Manifesto.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of chapters in there, like that chapter, Why I Write the Heartbreak Country Music. I mean, I think it shows that I'm more an artist than someone who would be a lawyer. But I was really encouraged to get a strong education, as you're suggesting. I became a lawyer. I was very successful at it. But what's the point of being successful and soulless, right? What's the point of being successful in the world but empty within yourself? What's the point of fitting in and pleasing the crowd when you lose yourself along the way. I think the definition of heartbreak is getting to the end of a quarter or a year or a career or a lifetime and realizing you lived your neighbor's life or your mother's life or society's life. And that's a lot of what the Everyday Hero is about. It's how do you break free of following the crowd and this world that we're living in and really start to own your genius and do amazing things in your work that inspire the world while they materialize your promise and live the life that you want to live, no matter what that looks like.
I'm a strong believer, and it's something I talk about all the time, is living with no regrets. And it's something I'm very passionate about, but it's something that even living that, which my mindset is I try to live that at the fullest, you always still have regrets, no matter what. I'll just give you an example. My father passed away 8 months ago, and he was my best friend. I was the 44-year-old I would call my dad 3 times a day. I was the 44-year-old I would see my dad once, twice a week. They live in Etobicoke, and I spent so much time with him. I did everything I could. When he suddenly passed away unexpectedly, I still had all these regrets, all these things I wish I could have done with him. Right. So you live with that. How do you break through to somebody to live with no regrets, to live to their fullest? Like, where is your mindset, and how do you preach that? How do you push that out of somebody?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your father's passing.
Yeah.
Secondly, I can't believe you're 44. So whatever you're doing, keep it going.
Tell my wife and my kids that.
Yeah, that's funny. But how do I preach? Well, I never try to preach. I try to meet people where they're at.
Interesting.
In all of my books or my mentoring with billionaires and sports superstars and titans of industry, I never try to preach. I try to listen, and I try to meet them where they're at. Okay. I don't think anyone loves being preached at. In terms of regret, I think it comes down to philosophy. Like, I personally don't have a lot of regrets because everything that has happened to me has shaped me and molded me. And it's my suffering has taught me strength. My trials have introduced me to hidden talents I didn't know I had. It's like when you're on your knees, that's when you get to know how strong you are. When life knocks you down, for example, that cracks the ego that covers your heart and teaches you compassion. We learn strength, bravery, compassion, wisdom, creativity when we are in a difficult time. So how could I regret the heartbreak? How could I regret the losses? How could I regret the plan Bs when it's almost like there was a hidden set of invisible hands leading me along. There's that old idea, a bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. My ego didn't like it when things, right? My ego didn't like it when things didn't work out. But in hindsight, I realized everything that happened to me was like this majestic orchestration, perfectly designed to help me grow into the person destiny wants me to be.
When did you you're constantly learning and growing. That's just how we are as humans. When did you find or realize the gift you have? Even just like, I'm just listening to you talk right now, and it's like, I almost want to give you a hug. You're so inspiring. You're so motivational. Just the way you get to somebody's soul. When did you, even if you haven't yet, but when did you find that moment where it was like, I have a gift to give?
Well, I don't know if I have a gift.
You do. You definitely do.
Well, you're more than generous, Jeff. But 26 years 26 years toiling on my craft.
Yeah.
To get to a place where it looks like I have a gift.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's genius, is so much more about your habits and your practice than your genetics and your DNA. And that's something I've been evangelizing for so long. It's really easy to pedestal people who look like they have a gift, and you don't see the sweat equity that has gone on for 2 decades to work on the gift. But thank you for saying that. I think there's some natural inclination towards communication and wisdom and philosophy and helping people glorify their talents. And then a lot of hard work in the trenches to do that. So I don't know if I have a gift, but I love what I do. I've been at it over a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
And I love writing the books. I love giving the presentations. I love mentoring people. And I do it because I love being creative. I love trying to get better, but mostly I want to be a humble servant to as many people as possible. If you look at the world right now, a plague rules the earth. Wildfires are all over the place. There's social unrest. There's economic volatility. And I think a lot of people are really scared and confused and looking for some kind of a grounding. And I wrote the Everyday Hero Manifesto 16 months during the pandemic. I started it actually before the pandemic began in a hotel room in Tribeca. And then once, everything got locked down, you're a Canadian, so I was in Toronto as well, and during that time, so it's, if you can't go out, you can go within, and obviously there's incredible suffering and collective trauma as a result of what's going on. But one of the upsides was I had all this time, at home where I could just really work on the craft and write the book and try to be as vulnerable as I could be. And finish this project.
When you're writing, do you try to take yourself out of your normal element, or like you said, obviously during the pandemic you were home, but is it do you have a certain schedule? Like I like writing in the morning. I like writing. You do. Okay, what's your schedule like?
Sure. Well, first thing is I try to get lost.
Okay.
So in an ideal world, like with the 5 a.m. club, I wrote it. I mean, those, I don't know if you've read the book, but in the 5 a.m. club, it was in, there was Mauritius and there was Rome and a lot of those parts of the vineyard in South Africa. I was actually in those places writing those chapters.
I love that.
So I'm a firm believer that you can't inspire if you're de-inspired. And I also believe that we feel that inspiration when we force ourselves to get away from our routine and our home territory. And then if we go to beautiful places, whether it's Mauritius or Rome or wherever, those are the places that lift my spirit, then we get we allow our brains to go into transient hypofrontality, flow state, and we connect with the secret orbit that geniuses have known, but we can know that as well. It's just often we don't get to the places we need to and create the routines that would allow us to inhabit that sense of possibility. Like, we all have a brain that can shift from beta to alpha to theta. We all have a brain that can create flow. But as I say in the new book, to have the results only 5% of the population has, you've got to be willing to do what 95% of the population is unwilling to do. And so most of us, good souls, but we want the rewards of world class, but we're not willing to pay the price that world class requires. So one of the things when I write, I try to get away and I go dark. My team doesn't send me emails. I go dark. I vanish.
Yeah.
I vanish, even if it's for 8 days or 10 days. I vanish.
I love
and
it.
Literally, I turn off my phone for most of the day, or sometimes 2 or 3 days. I start my day with some great coffee. I love to sunbathe for a little while. I might read Meditations of Marcus Aurelius or something philosophical. I love morning exercise, especially if I'm writing, it's gentler. So I'll go for a walk. If it's Rome, I'll go up to Villa Borghese. And then I have my 5 great hours rule that I talk about in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, which is very disruptive. But I lock myself away from the world for 5 hours, and I do really intense, sweaty, serious, undistracted cognitive work. And I started at about 8 o'clock. And if I can get 4 or 5 hours or maybe 6 hours of flow state creativity and work, I'm done. And then I leave my hotel room and I go for a walk, and I take the rest of the day off. And I live that kind of a monastic life for weeks or 2 weeks at a time when I'm writing a book.
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 5-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
And has there ever been moments when you complete a book and then you just like, how many times do you go back and edit it or go back and change before you're like, when do you know in your soul is like, okay, I'm done? Like, is there always questions, or do you always question yourself? Like, because you've written so many books, like, is there, as an author, is there moments where it's like, this is not ready yet? And it's like, even though you know it's done, you always have that question in your mind?
I'm smiling because I'm really enjoying speaking with you. You're a great interviewer. You ask thoughtful questions. You listen, and it's probably because you're Canadian. You know, like I'm really enjoying it, and so I thank you for that. I forget who said it. I think it was the person who wrote A Prayer for Owen Meany, the famous author.
Yeah,
John Irving. Anyway, it was John Irving, and I think he said, "I'm not a great writer. I'm a great editor." And I thought that was very profound. And so the Everyday Hero Manifesto, I thought it was done in February of 2020 after those 16 days in Tribeca. I probably iterated it, polished it 20 to 30 times. I'm talking about the entire manuscript.
Yeah.
20 to 30 times. I mean, I can show you some of the pictures in the book that shows what the manuscript looks like if I can find it. But I think, you know, you're here it is. So there's a chapter in the book called Kill Your Darlings. And that speaks to the fact that in any creative project, you've got to have the bravery and discipline to kill the things you think are amazing for the sake of making sure only the very best gets into the work. And I think that's a very powerful point. But I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
See all the writing on that manuscript?
Yeah, I love it. It.
That was I did that 20 or 30 times with the entire 350 page manuscript. That level of iteration, changing it. Then my assistant Angela would bring it back again. Like I like to work on a stack of paper, go through it again, you know, all 300 or 400 pages, iterate it, change it, add a quote, you know, and I think that's what it takes if you want to do your best work.
I love that. And everything you do obviously there's that moment of passion. When do you like, is there a moment where it's like you're just driving and you get this thought in your head for a great book and you have to like pull out your phone? Like, is it almost like you always hear when I talk about artists, songwriters, where that moment hits them where they got to pull their phone and record or say something, they're going to forget it. Do you have those moments?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have those moments, Jeff, when I have those moments.
Yeah.
And then I have these deserts of cognitive depletion. And what I mean is, I really believe in the muse, and maybe the muse is our higher power, or maybe it's our instinct.
Yeah.
You know, when we get out of the ego and listen to the muse, that's the power of nature walks. That's the power of journaling. That's the power of silence. That's the power of great music. That's the power of traveling. Yeah. We get out of our ego, or let's go to the neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex, and we get to a deeper place of thinking. And when we get to that, the muse, or it could be our instinct, whatever term you want to call it, could be God, whatever works for you, we start to get these downloads. So when I'm in one of those seasons of creative harvest, I'll get book ideas, I'll get like pages and pages and pages and pages of one-liners, like becoming sometimes fully formed paragraphs.
Yeah.
And I'll write them down. And then, you know, I finished the book in June. and I've been on podcasts and all
Can I
that
say
kind
one
of
quick
thing.
thing? I
Sure.
love that you take pen to paper still. Everything I do is pen to paper. Everything I do is
Totally.
pen to paper.
Totally.
Every morning, I'm just
Totally.
constantly just writing notes, writing stuff. I love it. That's me. Everywhere you go, in my car, in my Jeep, at home,
Me
I just
too.
got notepads everywhere. I love that. I love that. Sorry,
Yeah,
but I
I mean,
apologize for interrupting there. Your thought process there.
No, it's no problem at all. It's I've got the iPad, I've got the phone,
Yeah.
I've got the the paper. That paper. It's like an iPad that you can write on.
Yeah.
I always just default. I need to write. I'm a writer. I need to
Yeah.
write. I can't help not write. But yes, so I finished the book and I gave everything into the book, and then I think if you do your job well on a creative project, whether it's an app or a business or a book or a screenplay, then you should be creatively empty.
Yeah.
And so the past few months, I've been, to confess, pretty much empty. I mean, I'm still getting ideas, and it's very easy to wonder if something's wrong. But what I've realized is if you really, I don't subscribe to the hustle and grind philosophy. I believe if you want to do your best work as an entrepreneur, a business builder, create an artist, you've got to trust the seasons. And I think sometimes you are in the harvest season, like a great farmer, and a great farmer also lets the field go fallow.
Yeah.
And in the fallow season, the ego or the mind says, "Oh, why am I not hustling and grinding? I feel guilty." But it's in the fallow season that the ideas are incubating for your next creative project. And so if you sort of just trust the seasons and push your best creativity when you're full of creativity, and then when you're empty, rest, recover, travel, read, have great conversations, think, plan, I think you're going to do amazing work and live a much more balanced life.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the very fact that inspiration sometimes comes from pain, or like when my father passed away, I needed something to keep his memory going. And 7 days after he passed away, in 6 days, I wrote 6 children's books. And I've released 2. I'll show you here. Here's one. Give me 1 second to show you something.
Sure.
I usually never talk myself on shows, but I mean, so the first one we did was, I don't know if you can see it here.
I can.
It's Strawberry Hill, a lesson on gratitude. And all the books are dedicated to my dad, and all the proceeds go to Sick Kids Hospital, which is very close to our hearts. And they all start off in the same thing. It says, in a loving memory of Grandpa Joe, you're tender and kind, what a beautiful memory you left behind. And they're all on, this is actually my son, Tiago, my daughter, Sierra. And all the books and characters are built around them. And the second one I just released actually yesterday is called Kindness Goes a Long Way. And they're just lessons. And these books it was like I had to release something, and I'm going to release them slowly and it's not about the monies. All the money is, like I said, is going to go to sick kids. And it was more of, I had these, I couldn't even understand it. It was just, I took pen to paper, and in 6 days I didn't leave my house, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I've never been an individual to rhyme. And it all started coming together, the words. It was crazy how it all came together. And I've written before. I mean, I have a book called Entrepreneurial Dad I released about 1.5 years ago. I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years, right? So, and I always found that separation between being a parent and being a successful entrepreneur. I found there's a big gap when every time I would talk to people, and I want to kind of show how I kept it all together, how I kept my schedule together. I call it the 3 to 6 every day. I'm home from 3 to 6. I haven't missed a dinner at home for almost 12 years with my family. Amazing. And there's certain things I've done, right? So inspiration comes from different areas, right? And it's amazing what you have done and accomplished. When you always hear that thing, writer's block, has there been moments where it's like, I need to get an idea, and it just is not coming? And has any of those moments prolonged for longer than you expected?
Well, before I answer that, if I may, I really want to congratulate you for being such a family man.
Thank you.
Family to me is so incredibly important. I have mentored so many billionaires, CEOs of big companies, movement makers, and some of them, they're in their mansions or their jets or their yachts, and they have all the money that so many people think would bring happiness, but they're alone.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great time in the world right now to do one thing, which is reconnect with the timeless values.
I love that.
And ask yourself, how do you want to really measure success and what is true wealth? There's a chapter in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. It's very disruptive, and it's called The 8 Forms of Wealth. We think wealth is economic wealth. That's the bill of goods our society has told us.
Yeah.
I think there's 8 forms of wealth. One of them is family. The joy I get, my son was just visiting me, and, the joy I get, I've got 2 amazing kids. I've got an amazing life partner. I've got a great little dog that she brought into my life. My parents are thank God still healthy in their 80s.
Yeah.
And I think, that is amazing. So incredible. So I appreciate your respect and your love and your devotion to your family. I mean, that to me is something, rather than the hustle and grind. Yes. I mean, I think we can do it both. And obviously it sounds like we both figured out how to do it both. If I may, I'd also like to ask you, if you want to go there, the best thing you learned from your father, or I'm just curious, the best thing you learned from your father, or the best thing you learned from your father just watching how he lived his life?
Non-negotiables. I mean, my dad worked at Ford Motors in Oakville plant for 30 years. Worked 12-hour shifts back then. I mean, they were pumping out minivans and trucks out of that factory. Were 12-hour shifts. And back then, he was making incredible money. And if you worked weekends, you'd make time and a half to triple time. All our family and all my uncles worked there. Everybody worked at that factory, and everybody worked weekends. My dad never worked one weekend. Every weekend was family time, and he made sure he was with us every weekend. And understanding, he made that a non-negotiable. Money was not everything to him. Spending time with his family. My dad would block all his holidays, his 4 weeks of holidays, into one block every year. And we'd jump in the car, drive for 12 hours to Cape Cod, and spend 3 weeks every summer in Cape Cod for over 12 years.
Amazing.
And those memories I have they're priceless. When my kids were old enough to have a memory, the first thing I did, road trip. And pandemic has changed us now, but we do one getaway and one road trip every year because I love road trips. There's nothing more amazing than sitting in the car for 12 to 20 hours and your kids are crying, they're throwing up, everybody's upset. But when you sit down and start to think about those memories a year later or 3 months later or a week later, you laugh, you have such good memories, right? And the first thing I did with my kids when they were old enough, our first road trip was got them in the car, got my wife in the car, and we drove to Cape Cod, and we spent a week in Cape Cod. And it's man, those non-negotiables. And I didn't even realize he had that. And it took me to be an adult to have teenage kids to sit back and be like, that was my dad put that in his schedule. And he wasn't taught. He didn't have motivational speakers. He was a factory. He was an immigrant, came to Canada. My mom and my dad, my mom was 19. My dad was 24. We were Portuguese. They came from Portugal. And God bless them. The first thing they did was to go to George Brown College and learn English. And they both took courses. My dad took repairing back then printers and fax machines, whatever it was. And then my mom got pregnant and with my older sister, and he realized very quickly he couldn't do an apprenticeship for a year and a half. He needed money, and that's what kind of pushed him to Ford, and the rest is history. But family was everything to him. Family was everything to him. Everything I did, and I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years. I've done extremely well. I run a couple of companies. We got 10 properties. We do all kinds of different stuff. And it was just this seeing his joy of me succeeding His joy of just seeing his children doing well was everything to him. Like that was the ultimate trophy, ultimate award to him. Is like, I've made it because my children have made it. And that was so inspiring seeing, right? So my dad was just and everything too was just, he was just a simple man that never spoke. I never heard a bad word out of his mouth towards other people.
Wow.
He never, he never wanted conflict. He just wanted a simple, good life, and he wanted people to be happy around him, which is so amazing. So amazing. And I love him to death. And I know we're going there. I didn't even think we were going to go there today, but when he passed away, the first 74 days, I visited him every day at the cemetery. And it was hard, man. And it's still hard. It's been 8 months, and it's like, I would do anything to be able to hear his voice one more time, to see him one more time. Right. And it was really hard of how it actually happened, because it was just so sudden. It was May 6th, 10 at night. I would call him to say goodnight every night. Every night we would call him this talk before we went to bed for 5 minutes. And I call him and said, "How was your day?" "Oh, I'm tired. I had a long day, Jeff. I was tired." And that was it. And I got a call. I'm up at 4:30 every morning. And I get a chunk of my work done from usually between 5 to 8, 9 a.m. I'm usually done most of my work for the day.
Totally understand.
And I got a call 6 a.m. on May 7th, and that he passed away. I jumped in my car. I lived in Brampton, jumped in my car. I got there in about 20 minutes. When I got there, it was too late. He had passed away already. He died of a sudden heart attack. And my life I relived that day over and over, what I could have done different, what I could have said to him the night before. And I know you can't change anything, but he was just this, man, I wish more people would have met my dad. He was just a wonderful human, such a good person. So yeah, I apologize for going there. I went on a rant here. So
no, don't apologize. I mean, thank you for sharing it. It sounds like, I mean, just imagine if the world was totally full of people like your dad. He sounds, as simple as it sounds, he sounds like a good human.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to do what you need to do to go through your grieving process, but yeah. I don't think you need to beat yourself up. You sound like you're an extraordinary son. If I understood you correctly, every night, even before, right? You'd call him every night to say,
"Oh yeah,
I don't know many people who."
I would call him. I mean, now my mom and my dad, but I mean, every morning on the way to work, I call on the drive to talk to them for 5-10 minutes. I would call them midday to see how they're doing, and I would call them every night to say goodnight.
Great son.
Yeah. It's just, you have to, man, just appreciate the time you have with them, man. I mean, I think with a lot of individuals, we get stuck with our daily routines, our quote unquote hectic lives, and then that's what I meant by the no regrets is pick up the phone, call your loved ones, talk to them. Like, there is going to be a time where you're not going to be able to do that. So,
well, if I may, I think it speaks to the point, like, what's the point of spending the best hours of your finest days climbing mountains only to realize at the end of your life, you climbed the wrong ones?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And I think it's really important at this stage, especially with the world in such turmoil, ask yourself, what do you want to stand for? Ask yourself, I mean, there's a chapter towards the end of the Everyday Hero Manifesto that actually challenges this idea of legacy. And I used to believe in it. I wrote a book 20 years ago called Who Will Cry When You Die? It's all about your legacy. To live on in the hearts of those who leave behind, Joseph Campbell's idea, to make your mark on the world so that, posterity will remember you. And now I think legacy is a fool's sport.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to die.
Yeah.
No matter how long we get to live, even a long life is a very short ride. And the titan of industry gets buried next to the street sweeper.
Yeah.
And when we're dead, we're just going to be a pile of ashes in an urn over a fireplace next to someone's Little League trophies. We're not going to be remembered except for a few people like our family. So I think legacy is a waste of time. I think it's what you're suggesting. It's, may we live while we are alive.
Yeah,
And
100%.
let's not spend any energy worrying about how we would be remembered as a history maker. Let's put family first. Let's put our ethics first. Let's trust our ethical ambitions and our personal Mount Everests. And let's do those things, right? Like, a great life is made not in the safe harbor of the known, but by going blue ocean.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how we become stronger, better, faster, wiser human beings, and do those things like that we know in our hearts we should do. There's another chapter in the book. I was in traffic. You'll know where I'm talking about. I was on the DVP in Toronto.
Yeah.
And it was like, and if you know it, I'm sure you know it, right?
Yeah.
It's usually nothing but traffic between 3 and 7. And it was a sunny day, and there was a gentleman ahead of me in traffic, bumper to bumper. And he had a license plate. He looked like an elderly person, convertible, enjoying life, and his license plate said "Time for Fun." And it's like, how many people postpone taking the trips of lifetimes until they're too old to enjoy them? How many people postpone saying the things in their heart they know they should say until it's too late to say them? How many people don't forgive the people that they're carrying on their back because they haven't forgiven them until it's too late to do it? So, I think there's something to be said for hedged risk taking and, not playing small with the promise that we've been given.
Yeah. There's so much to impact. I'm going to give you a little story here. And it's just, I love that you said that because it is so true. My dad only had one sibling, which is his brother. And this is a story I've only told maybe once or twice. And when their father, my grandfather, passed away, my uncle was, and still is, I'm sure till today, we haven't talked in a while, but he was always the individual where he was very money driven. And my father was a very simple person. And long story, I'll pack it down a little bit more. But it was a situation when my grandfather passed away. My uncle kind of pushed away from my dad, and it was because of properties and money in Portugal and stuff. And my dad was just like, didn't want nothing to do with that. And long story is, they didn't talk for quite a few years. And one thing I kept asking my dad, I kept saying, like, listen, I go, you got to call your brother. Like, he's your only sibling. I would tell my dad this on a regular basis. My dad's like, listen, when he's ready to talk to me, he'll call me. Mm-hmm. And he never did. And when my dad passed away, we had a very small funeral because of COVID. There was only 10 people allowed at the funeral, which really, really absolutely sucked because he had so many people that loved him and wanted to see him and or be there for him. And about 3-4 days later, when I went to see him, to visit my dad, there was a letter there, and it was a letter from my uncle. And it was just heart-throbbing letter that I literally cried. I couldn't believe he actually wrote this, but it was just pretty much a letter saying like how he was so sorry he never came by. He was so sorry that he never made peace with this all. And it was just a letter. It was a letter of regret. And in my heart, I'm like, it angered me, part of me, because my mind's like, if you had just done this when my dad was alive, it would have meant the world to him. And you're doing it now that he's not here. So a lot of people, just to what you said, they when they do realize it, it's sometimes too late. And
is it, just so I understand, Jeff, are you saying that after your father passed, your uncle wrote a letter
and left it right at his sitting there at his he physically left the letter there at his tombstone. He left a letter there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was and my dad's in the wall, and it was weird because it was stuck in halfway. He was almost trying to stuff it in there, and it was just like halfway in, and I had to pull it out. And I was just like, who left this here? And when I read it, right. So it's so hard to understand why. I mean, like I said, we get so busy with our lives, we don't truly live to the fullest. And at the same time, we don't do the things we truly need to do till it's too late sometimes. So I love that how what you said, that we do need to understand that and start living that way, living as if today is our last day on earth. A lot of you hear that all the time, right?
And I think I think the point is we're singing from the same songbook.
Yeah.
And I think the key is to institutionalize some form of grounding and introspection every day.
Yeah.
You know, there's a story I came across, and the Indian Maharaja would wake up every morning. Everyone talks about morning routine right now, and his morning routine was he would recreate his entire funeral, complete with music and flowers, all the while chanting, "I have lived fully, I have lived fully, I have lived fully." And my dad explained to me when I asked him, "What's this all about?" He said, "This man has found a way to each morning connect with his own mortality, and to remind him on the shortness of life." And this sounds like a metaphysical or philosophical idea, but by the way, philosophy is incredibly important. We're in this world right now. It's give me the tactics, hustle and grind. What's the routine?
Yeah.
Philosophy without methodology without philosophy might send you in the wrong direction. You could be really efficient at the wrong things. Peter Drucker, the great management guru, said there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all.
Yeah.
So I think methodology and tactics are important, but we're in such a science, math-based world, we're discounting the value of philosophy. And I think each day, it's valuable to set up some kind of a morning practice to remind yourself what's most important. And maybe you get up and you write in a journal. You get up, and I get up early as well, and you read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations or something philosophical. Before you go to sleep, you take 5 minutes and you write in a journal. And every Sunday morning, you reconnect with your values and you plan your week and all those kinds of things. And that's why each day after work, almost every day, I go for a nature walk.
I love it.
And sometimes I just, it's been an intense business day, so I clear my head. And sometimes I will listen to audiobooks or podcasts. And sometimes, Jeff, I just think, I just think about what I want to stand for, how I'll be remembered. And I think the more you can come back to the shortness of life, the more you can come back to being an army of one, protecting your own values, even if no one else believes in them. I mean, that's what leadership is about. Yeah. And I think that's what life is about. Leo Tolstoy wrote a short story called The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Ivan Ilyich got to the end of his life and asked himself a fundamentally heartbreaking question. What if my whole life was a lie?
That's powerful.
Right. So how many people in the world right now, good souls, full of potential, incredible gifts and talents, and they're living their neighbor's life.
Yeah.
They're chasing purely money. I'm not saying anything's wrong with money. I mean, money allows you to do amazing things with your family. It gives you a great source of freedom, allows you to biohack, allows you to travel, allows you to give to others. I think a lot of people, though, they put money as their gods versus their servants. Yeah. And I think, what we're talking about is, and that's one of the benefits coming from the pandemic, right? The great resignation, the great, what they call it, the great quit. People are leaving cities, leaving their jobs, but they're reconnecting and awakening to what's truly most important in life. And I think that's really something to think about. What is success to you? And then having the bravery to construct the remainder of your life based on your scoreboard of what success is, even if no one gets you. Every great visionary was ridiculed before they were revered.
Yeah. Yeah. What other forms of art really drive your passion to? Do you draw?
I don't draw.
Or paint or anything?
I don't paint.
Music?
No, I love music. Sure.
What genres of music do inspire you? And you said,
like the past, like through the whole pandemic, I've become like super country music
Seriously?
fan.
Yeah.
No, today I listened 2 hours. I listened to, what is it, Wade Bowen.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went down the rabbit hole. Wade Bowen and Chris Stapleton, Whiskey Myers,
Yeah.
all of those country music. I love country music. I love trip hop in the evenings, when we're relaxing and reading. I love trip hop. I make playlists for different creative projects. I make playlists for New Year's Eve. I make playlists for Friday night dinners if I'm on a trip to Italy or Mauritius or London. While I'm there in the vibe that I'm at, I'll make playlists in my free time. So I love music, and I love being around art. I mean, I love going to art galleries like the Tate Modern in London and Museum or Gallery of Academia in Florence. And I just think I think it's really important, if you want to push magic into the world through your work, you've got to know what magic looks like.
Yeah.
There's so little magic. People saying, oh, there's so much competition. There's no competition in the rare air of magic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition in pushing ordinary coffee, apps, books, films, tons of competition. But magic is so rare. And I think you've got to know what magic looks, smells, feels, and tastes like. And that's why I love being around masterworks by the great men and women of the world. You get a sense of what magic is like. And I think when you're around great art, you're communing with the energy of the artist, and that rubs off on you.
I love that. Do you collect art yourself?
I don't really. I wouldn't say I'm an art collector, but I have a few favorite artists.
Okay. With all the places you've been to, traveling wise and stuff like that, and you obviously have certain spots that inspire you more than others when it comes to creativity for work. Which places have you been to which just left a memory that'll never be broken? Like a place that you're just like, wow, this is such an inspiring place.
Well, I can't tell, otherwise all your followers will show up. We'll all be there and I'll lose the quiet. I'll lose the quietude. No, I'm just joking. Well, I'm a huge fan of Mauritius, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
It's this little magical island in the Indian Ocean, about 4 hours off the coast of Cape Town. I'm a huge fan of South Africa. I love South Africa. My life changed the 2 times I stood in Nelson Mandela's prison cell on Robben Island. My life absolutely changed, especially the first time my life changed.
What was the first time you've been there? How many years ago was that?
2016. It was
so recent.
I believe July of 2016. Yeah. You can't help but, if your heart is open, you can't help but be changed standing in his prison cell, which was about the size of this room here. No, about half the size of the room that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
There was no bed. There was just a table that looked out onto the courtyard. I went to the limestone quarry where he damaged his eyes because of the sun shining off the limestone. It was a form of torture, because all day for 7 years or so, he was just breaking rock with the other ANC prisoners, but it wasn't used for anything. So it was just, no meaning and purpose. I saw the showers where he would shower as an elderly man, and the young guards would laugh at him while he was naked showering. I went to the commissary when I went to his cell, and I saw where he spent 18 years of his life. He wasn't allowed out of that cell to attend the funeral of his eldest son, who was killed in a car accident. The letters from Winnie Mandela, I saw the propaganda office where they would actually not give the letters from his family. Talk about torture, family. Imagine not receiving any letters from your family and wondering what's going on. Or letters from Winnie, for example, his wife at the time, that were, what's the word? Cut out or blackened out. Redacted. Yeah. So, but South Africa is an amazing, amazing place. I love London. If you're an artist, you've got to walk the streets of London.
Yeah.
How many artists have been there? I find California has a great vibe, just a very open vibe. New York is amazing. Dubai is fascinating. The north of Europe is cool. Like, the Scandinavian countries. I mean, the world is an amazing place.
Yeah. Scandinavian countries are, I always say if there's another place I'd probably live, it'd be one of those Scandinavian countries. I mean, it's just, their mindset, their way they live, their inspiration for art and music. And that's one place if I were to be forced, I love Canada. I'm a very proud Canadian, but if there was another place, I'd be, I think one of the Scandinavian countries would be ideal. Fatherhood. What does fatherhood mean to you?
It's hard to summarize it. I would say fatherhood is joy. Fatherhood is a privilege. Fatherhood, my job is not to be my children's friend, even though we're extraordinarily close. Most people would, if you saw me with my kids, you'd go like, I can't believe it. You guys are like best friends.
Yeah.
You and your children. But this is just my perspective, but my job is not to be their friend. I think too many parents fall into the trap of trying to be liked and, be their children's friend. We are our children's parents. We have to set boundaries. I think it's important to mentor our children. I learned this from Jacqueline Kennedy. She would expose her children to great art and great conversations. JFK's father, Joseph Kennedy, brought fascinating figures and sat them down at the dinner table over long dinners, and the kids were actually there. So many parents say, okay, the guest is here, now you guys go watch TV in the den. But Joseph Kennedy would have fascinating people, and then he'd have the kids, and they were little kids around the table. So fatherhood is like, to me, it's mentoring, it's championing.
Yeah.
It's sometimes having hard conversations. I think you can say what you want so long as you say it with respect. So I think it's important to say things to your kids in loving ways, but that are honest and truthful. And if they don't like it, that's not really my issue. I read a great book called Chasing Daylight, and it was about the global CEO of KPMG, and he was given 90 days left to live. He had an inoperable brain tumor. So he spent his last 90 days creating what he called perfect moments with his family, because he didn't spend that much time with his family. To me, fatherhood is creating perfect moments with your loved ones. I mean, just literally orchestrating perfect moments. It's so powerful when you're intentional. Friday night, family dinner. Yeah. How can I make a perfect moment? Maybe you write a letter to your loved ones and you recite it before you eat dinner. Maybe you have the right playlist. Maybe you make a new meal, bucatini limone, al limone. But, these kinds of intentional things are very powerful. So fatherhood is a great privilege.
I love that. You said you have a pooch now, a dog. What type of dog is it?
It's a Chorky. She's a Chorky.
It's a little one.
She's a little one who thinks she's a Great Dane. She thinks she walks around like she's the biggest dog in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
She thinks she's a big dog. She's got a very strong heart, tons of courage, character. But she's a Chorky, part Yorkie, part Chihuahua. Great dog.
Yeah, dog. I mean, I grew up. My parents used to take dogs out of shelters, and we'd always have 2-3 dogs. Growing up, we always had 2-3 dogs, and when we got married, we the first thing we said to her, myself and my wife, we looked at each other and we were like, okay, we're going to learn to live together. So we lived together for a year, and then we're going to learn how to take care of something. The first thing we did was get a dog after a year. And we had Milo for over 13 years till he passed away. And recently, a couple of years ago, we got a lab, Jax. And there's nothing that fills a house, unconditional love of a dog. I think it's so important to have around children, just that unconditional love, that responsibility, that affection a dog brings. So I love that you mentioned that at the beginning. Let's end it with a little bit more about your book, and anything you want to talk about your book before we head out today.
Well, The book is called The Everyday Hero Manifesto. I'm really grateful to all my readers around the world. They've made it one of the best-selling books in the world right now, and it's a roller coaster ride. It's a very contrarian book. It's part manual for exponential productivity and massive success in the world. It's part philosophical, spiritual handbook. It's part personal development book on personal mastery and owning your gifts and your talents so you live, your highest life. There's chapters on the time 10 years of my journals vanished. There's chapters on Steve Jobs's last 6 words. There's chapters on my pyramid of exponential productivity. It's my most vulnerable book, my most honest book. Not that I've ever tried not to be honest, but I just went to places I've never gone to. I've put so much of my methodology that I've shared with many of the world's most successful people into it. And it's available in audiobook. It's in Indigo and Amazon and Audible. And I'm really happy to say a percentage of my royalties go to help children with leprosy rise.
Let's talk about your foundation. That was something I actually wanted to talk about. So I apologize for skipping that. Let's talk about your foundation quickly.
Sure. Well, probably 3 years ago, my dad, who used to be a family physician in Africa early on in his career, he worked with lepers.
Okay.
So about 3 years ago, he said, Robin, if you ever have a chance to help people suffering from leprosy, you don't hear about leprosy, right?
Yeah.
In Canada, we don't hear about it. But he said, if you ever have a chance to do it, do it. So I have this foundation. It's a foundation for children. And for my past few books, I've been giving a part of the royalties to this foundation to help children suffering from leprosy.
And this foundation started, you said 3 years ago?
The foundation started maybe 12 years ago.
Oh, so it's been okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we've helped childhood literacy. We've given to different causes, but now my focus is leprosy, reducing leprosy.
I'm going to ask you one more thing. I have all these things I wanted to ask you. Fitness. How important is fitness in your life? Fitness, yeah, working out, taking care of yourself.
Oh, massively. Oh, there's some key chapters in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. One is called the Trinity of Radiant Vitality. It talks about epigenetics. If someone's not aware of epigenetics, if someone's not aware of biohacking, if someone's not aware of the pharmacy of mastery that happens when you exercise, let's say first thing in the morning, the release of dopamine, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, oxytocin, serotonin, norepinephrine, which boosts focus, the reduction of cortisol. Fitness is incredible. To extend your telomeres, which is one of the primary metrics of your real age versus what I call your driver's license age.
Yeah.
Fitness is, especially first thing in the morning, it amplifies creativity, productivity, boosts your mood. It helps you live longer. You look better, which is hard, I need all the help I can get.
I love it. This is a question we've kind of gone through back and forth through this whole thing. And I'm just going to ask you one last thing, I promise. If something were to happen to you today, in a couple words, how would you want to be remembered by your family or described by your loved ones?
Honestly, it's what I shared earlier. I don't like the phrase, I don't care. It sounds so disrespectful.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, Jeff, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
I love it.
I have hopes and dreams. I have insecurities and fears. I have strengths. I have weaknesses. I am human. I'm a human being, and I'm doing the best. And I work really hard to be the best version of my highest self. And I really work really hard to push magic into the world through my work. I work really hard to be a good leader and a good family man and a good citizen of our little planet in a galaxy of trillions of other galaxies. And if I check out today, hopefully I'll have a chance to have a really good last meal and listen to one of my playlists with my family surrounding me. And it doesn't matter how they'll remember me as they'll remember me. And it doesn't matter. I go off to I'll check out and I'll go off to another podcast in the sky.
I love it. I love it. I love it, man. Going into, I've in the last, 170 episodes. I've been a guest on about 100 podcasts in the last year and a half, but I've interviewed about 100. I've done 160, 170 podcasts. And going into them, I try to be as curious as I can. I try not to research as much as I can about the individual. But at the same time, you never know going into an interview what you're going to get back. And I could honestly tell you, and I'm saying this looking straight in your face, everything about you, I have a smile inside and outside. Like I'm so happy we had this opportunity to talk, man. You're just a good person and you're a good human, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I mean, everything about you is authentic as you can, and that's all you could ask for somebody in life, is to be authentic. So I appreciate everything you're doing, brother. It's
been really fun chatting with you, and I appreciate
and next time you're back in Toronto, anytime you have a chance, I would love to meet up and have a nice steak dinner with you, or go out and just chat. And if you have any free time, and your office is in Yorkville, I see.
Yep, it's Midtown Toronto, exactly.
Yeah. How often do you, how much time a year do you spend in Toronto? Depends on the year. Depends on the year. The past 2 years, 99% of the time. So. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for this.
Hey, Jeff, great to meet you. You take great care.
Thank you, brother. That's a wrap for today. What a great conversation. I want to thank our guest, Robin, for taking time of his incredibly busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. If you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, like all weeks, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We're trying to build something special here. Leave a review. 5 stars will be absolutely amazing. My team, we love spending time reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.